We're going to be exploring the deepest depths of The Office, and I guarantee there's going to be something in here you don't know.
Because your satisfaction is our guarantee. We guarantee it.
For those that aren't aware of this concept, an iceberg video starts up here with the most common bits of knowledge that even the most casual of viewers understand. Then we get more and more obscure the deeper we go. So let's get started right at the top. UK Office. The Office as we know it is based off of the 2001 British show of the same name, written and directed by Ricky Gervais, who played the boss of the show, David Brent. Although it only ran for 12 episodes, it was a huge success and eventually was adapted for an American audience, and became the show we all know and love today. Ricky Gervais cameos. Ricky Gervais reprised his role of David Brent in 2 separate cameos. Funny enough, he was trying to find a job in both of those instances. That's what she said, is arguably the defining quote from The Office. It's been used over 40 times in the show, and whenever someone says it in real life, it's safe to say where they got it from. Despite that quote's attachment to the show, it wasn't an original line. Show writer BJ Novak heard the joke being thrown around in college, and it stuck with him ever since. So he used it in an episode, and the rest is history. Same name characters. A few actors on the show got to keep their names on set for their characters. This is because they were originally smaller side characters in the background, and when it was time for them to get bigger parts, the writers decided to just keep their names for the sake of simplicity. Michael Season 2. Season 1 Michael Scott was very different from how he is for the rest of the series. That was a purposeful change because this guy just wasn't working out. He didn't really have any redeeming qualities. He wasn't someone you could root for, so the writers switched some stuff around for him. For one, no more ending episodes on a sour note. Michael has to have at least a small moment of happiness. Like in Halloween, how he had to fire somebody that day, but at the end he got to give out candy to kids. They also made him more effective. Every now and then we get a glimpse at how Michael came to be the boss, because he actually is a good salesman. These were strong changes because they made us care about Michael Scott and thus mourn him when it was his time to go. Do the Scarn was sampled in the 2019 Billie Eilish song My Strange Addiction. Billie's a big fan of the show and has had over 30 watch-throughs. She has stated that she really didn't have any expectations that she could actually get the rights to use the audio from the show. Her and her brother were just messing around with the audio that was ripped straight from Netflix because the song title and theme fits with her love of the show. To her surprise, NBC gave their blessings to use the audio for the song. Webisodes. The Office had a set of online-only stories split up into multiple short episodes, ranging from Creed blackmailing everyone to Kevin trying to get a loan to open up an ice cream cart business. The first webisode series, The Accountants, actually won a Daytime Emmy Award and a Webby Award too. Most streamed show of 2020. The Office really blew up years after it had ended, in 2000 when it was airing on TV. Green screens are scarcely used on the show, but when they are, they're memorable to say the least. These usually come from not being able to return to a location or from budget restrictions. Podcasts. 2 breakout podcasts were made off of the show. Office Ladies with Jenna Fischer and Angela Kinsey debuted in 2019, where they go through a 1 episode a week recap of each Office episode and offer their insight and behind the scenes knowledge. The Office Deep Dive with Brian Baumgartner debuted in February of 2021 and ran for a total of 23 episodes, where he interviewed cast and crew about their time on the show and what the show means to people now. Kevin's embezzlement. This is a really popular theory that stems from the fact that Kevin used to be an actual competent accountant. He even won a tournament in the World Series of Poker in Vegas. It's speculated that he's been using his position to divert company funds into his own pocket, probably to fund his gambling addiction. It may not have started so nefarious though, because in The Convict he says this.
I had Martin explain to me 3 times what he got arrested for, because it sounds an awful lot like what I do here every day.
It stands to reason that he could have used that information to figure out a better way to hide the money being moved. Kevin potentially purposely dumbs himself down as the show goes on so as to avoid suspicion, but he slipped up and came up with 11, a fictional number he uses to fix his accounting errors. He got too into the part and was fired for it, but all in all, he seems to have gotten away with the money as that part was never found out. The Scranton Strangler. Their identity has been speculated amongst fans for a long time, and the general consensus / meme is that it was Toby. That topic is big enough to be its own video, so I'll just go over the evidence quickly. The Strangler's first mention was when Jim and Pam had their firstborn. That timing would fit if Toby was taking out his frustrations of Pam being with someone else on his victims. He also wasn't in the annex with everyone watching the car chase, even though they're all at his desk. During it, the phone rings and Kelly hangs up right away. But here's the the thing about office phones. For Toby's desk phone to ring, reception would have had to push the call to the desk, or someone would have had to already have Toby's extension number. So who was calling? People speculate that it was Toby himself calling to confess his crimes. By the way, that car scene on the TV has at one point been in the Dunder Mifflin parking lot. Toby also strongly believed that George Howard Scubb wasn't really the Strangler. Maybe he was feeling guilty that an innocent man was put behind bars for his crimes. He must have felt really guilty over those crimes if he had such a hard time even going inside of a church. Later on, when Toby goes to visit George Howard Scubb in prison, Toby gets attacked by him. Fans have suggested that Toby might have confessed to Scubb and Scubb attacked him for it. Another theory is that the Strangler is gay because that Strangler storyline only came about around the time he was introduced. He also has a love of disturbing horror stuff and enjoys a good power trip. Not to mention how obsessed he gets with Aaron after they break up. Honestly, he's a good candidate because he's the one we most medium suspect. Andy is another name that gets thrown around here and there due to his anger issues and how manipulative he eventually becomes. Season 1 Office. In the first season, they were testing out the waters with the documentary crew setup and opted to film in a real actual office building. When they changed locations for Season 2, they made a 1-to-1 replica of the original location. Season 1 Extras. In the first chunk of the first season, they had not established a supporting cast yet. This woman is Meredith and would later be recast. These two are actually accountants that were working on the show and had volunteered to be extras. It's speculated, from a story perspective, that all the background characters in these episodes were either let go from downsizing or saw how intrusive the camera crew was and quit. Bob Vance.
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
We already know about Bob, but why does he introduce himself that way? Well, it's because it's free advertisement for his business. There are cameras filming all around when he's with Phyllis, so he sees an opportunity and he takes it. Intro footage. Very excited to be getting this part, John Krasinski traveled to Scranton to get a vibe of the place. He filmed the town while his friend drove and even went to the local paper mill to interview some employees and its manager. When he showed creator Greg Daniels the town footage, Greg wanted to use it for the show's title intro and offered to buy it off of him. John was really surprised by that, so he sold it for $1,000 right away. Potential castings. The show as we know it could have turned out really different. A wide range of actors tried out for the parts of the main cast, including ones that got other parts. John Krasinski was supposed to audition for Dwight. Rainn Wilson tried out for Michael. And Angela Kinsey auditioned for Pam before the character of Angela Martin was even created. Thankfully, it all turned out the way it did. When John and Jenna were told they got the role, the first thing they asked the casting director was if the other got the part, because they worked so well together during the casting process. Jenna and Chili's. Pam was banned from Chili's for sneaking drinks and being too drunk. In 2017, Jenna Fischer tweeted this picture, which led to this statement from Chili's the following day, where the restaurant's president lifted Pam's 11-year ban. Functional computers. The computers on set were real functioning computers that were connected to the internet. This meant that every now and then, you could spot someone playing solitaire or checking their emails in the background. The Annex's writers. A few of the writers were also characters on the show, so in order to better juggle those two jobs, they put themselves in the annex so they didn't have to always be in the background of shots. Michael's song. Lots of people believe that the song that the cast sang to Michael when he was going to leave was a complete surprise to Steve, and that's why he had this reaction.
Oh my God, something's happening.
In reality though, Steve knew there was going to be a song since it was in the script, but the first time he ever heard it was when they shot the scene. Real spouse cameos. A few of the actors have had their real life partners on the show. Carol was played by Steve Carell's wife, Nancy Carell. The lactation consultant was played by Jenna's husband, Lee Kirk. And Paul Lieberstein's wife, Janine Poreba, played Toby's date. First, Jim and Pam kiss. There's been a debate between fans on when Jim and Pam actually had their first real kiss. Was it at Chili's or was it at the end of Casino Night? The Chili's one is technically their first, but she was drunk and it wasn't driven by romance. Some have even stated that it was accidental because she was aiming for his cheek and he moved his head. However, a deleted scene from Launch Party revealed this.
I was a little buzzed, but I knew what I was doing. You looked so surprised.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to kiss me that night. One needs to prepare for these things.
Low expectations. There wasn't a lot of confidence when the news broke out that there was going to be an American adaptation of The Office. Mostly everyone thought it was a terrible idea and that it would crash and burn. Paul Rudd initially advised Steve Carell to not do the show because it would be a bad move, due to how it couldn't possibly be as good as the British version. At his audition, John Krasinski told someone that he was worried the producers were going to screw the show up because of how great the British version is. As it turns out, the person he told that to was Greg Daniels, the show's executive producer. The show itself took a while to take off as the cast and crew were constantly worried those first seasons about the plug being pulled. Thankfully, the show improved their formula and Steve Carell became a movie star during that time. 13 Offices. The show is so popular that aside from the UK and American ones, there are 11 other versions from all over the world, ranging from Canada and Chile to France and Saudi Arabia. Koi pond footage. There's a near minute of security camera footage of Michael falling into the koi pond, and Jim really does put it best.
Truthfully, it wasn't the way he fell in, it was how long it took him to get out.
Character blogs. NBC and even some actors used to publish and maintain blogs of their characters. Jenna Fischer and Angela Kinsey also had their own MySpace accounts where they would blog about behind the scenes stuff. Super Bowl episode. The writers were pressured by NBC to include celebrity cameos, but they always pushed back because they didn't want to really break that realistic immersion the show had built up. However, the network pretty much made them include big names for the episode that'll air after the Super Bowl. Stress relief. They ended up compromising by having Jack Black, Cloris Leachman, and Jessica Alba make appearances but as themselves in a movie. The network expected big ratings since that's what happens when a show plays right after the Super Bowl, and those expectations were met because the episode was viewed by almost 23 million viewers, making it the show's most watched episode and the only one to surpass 20 million. Number 1. After Steve left, his number was retired on the call sheet, ensuring that no one else will ever be number 1 on the show again. Recast. The show ran for 8 years, so it makes sense that some characters had to be played by multiple actors, the most notable ones being Pam's mom and Andy's parents. Same actor, different character. There are also actors that got to play multiple characters. Nelson Franklin was Nick at the job fair as a graphic designer and then showed up again as the IT guy. Greg Daniels initially shot down Nelson's chance to come back on the show, but changed his mind because he didn't think anyone would remember that he was the job fair guy. Cameron Whitman is never seen again until he somehow becomes Dwight's nephew. Then there's Troy, who played the same character but had a massive fall from grace, going from being a business executive with Ryan to one of Dwight's weird friends. He also shows up in Thread Level Midnight for some reason. The Hangover Part 3. Andy infamously set off to sea and missed 7 consecutive episodes. This is because Ed Helms had to briefly leave the show to film The Hangover Part 3. Froggy 101, the #1 rated country western station in Scranton. It's also referenced multiple times and its logo sticker is hidden throughout the series. Toby was temporary. Toby was supposed to be a skit. For the 2011 Emmys, there was a skit with back-to-back cameos of people giving talking heads and interacting with the cast.
My crystal meth got here, guys.
No, it's not.
Call of Duty in Jim's room. In Season 2, when Jim is giving a tour of his room, a copy of Call of Duty 2 can be seen in the background. In Season 3, when everyone in the Stanford branch is playing the game, Jim doesn't seem to know what he's doing. A reason for this is that he could just be pretending to be bad at the game so he could bond with Karen. This would make sense because later on, he reveals to Pam that he actually does know how to drive stick. He just said that he didn't so she could teach him and spend time with him. Alternative intros. The title sequence was almost very different. Initially, the options for the intro song were Better Things by the Kinks, Float On by Modest Mouse, and Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra. Mr. Blue Sky ended up being the winner and was set to be the intro theme. It was already edited and done and put on a DVD for a cast viewing party. However, before the show could debut, another show called LAX came out and they coincidentally used Mr. Blue Sky as their theme song. So they had to scramble and come up with something else. They were really crunched for time, so much so that the actual Office theme as we know it wasn't recorded until the week before the first episode aired. Original show idea. When coming up with the American adaptation, Greg Daniels' initial idea was to title it The Office, an American Workplace. The reason for this was in case the network would have wanted to make different variations of different American workplaces. The title was later used for the name of the documentary inside of the show. Schrute Farms TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor has a functioning listing for Schrute Farms where fans can leave reviews of their stay. Angela's crush on Roy. Angela is into tough manly guys, so it makes sense that she would take a liking to Roy in some scenes. There's also a theory floating around that Roy actually had an affair with Angela. We already know he's attracted to her.
What would you do, Roy?
Oh, I got it. What's the name of that, tight-ass Christian chick, the blonde?
My name is Angela.
Hey, Angela. Roy, nice to meet you.
And that she sort of feels the same.
Angela, who would you choose, Jim or Roy?
It's nobody's business, Phyllis. Roy. Hi.
You have a crush on Roy.
I do not. That is inappropriate.
You have a crush on Roy.
Stop
Unbelievable.
it. Stop it right now.
Does he excite you? Does he get your blood flowing? Does he get your...
Kevin, you guys don't know anything.
There's also a scene that kind of sticks out in Cocktails where Angela sounds a little bit flustered.
You guys want a round? On me? Yeah? Let's get you a drink.
No, thank you, Roy.
Angela isn't one to shy away from affairs, as she had one with Dwight when she was with Andy, and the fact that she had two men fight over her before she worked in Scranton. This affair theory would also explain why her and Dwight know that the warehouse is a good place to sneak off to if she used to do the same with Roy. It also explains why she's always specifically mean to Pam, because she's jealous of her. Jim's wig. In season 3, Jim wears a wig. This is because John Krasinski landed a major role in the George Clooney directed film Leatherheads. However, he would have to cut his hair off for the part, and showrunner Greg Daniels didn't want that to happen because everyone would be able to tell that he was wearing a wig on the show. So John ended up getting help from the show's hairstylist, Kim Ferry, to secretly make a wig for him. He would then wear the wig and go talk to Greg Daniels about the wig again. Greg told him, "I'll know if it's a wig. You can't fake that kind of thing." Upon which John tells him that he doesn't think he'd know if he wore a wig while taking off the wig on his head. That's how he got permission to cut his hair for the movie role. Michael and biking. In season 3, Michael rides a bike into the office, but in season 7, he seems to have completely forgotten how to. Kevin's glasses. In Casino Night, Kevin wears reading glasses to play poker, and only to play poker. He's an accountant looking at lots of numbers all day, and he does that without wearing his glasses. Michael's college. Michael states that he saved up money for school, but lost it all in a pyramid scheme. However, he talks about his time in college a few times.
This is a meal in a cup, right here. Hot, tasty. Reminds me of college. You know what I really, really miss about college? The parties.
Meredith on Jim. Meredith's thoughts on Jim changed throughout the show. When she approached him to sign her cast in season 4, she's a little bit too eager about it.
I really appreciate you coming. I'm singling you out. I'll read this when I get home.
All right.
Then in season 8, she seems to be absolutely creeped out by him.
Tall, slim,
Jim.
almost instinctively she...
Meredith's job. In season 1, Jim mentions in her birthday card that she's an accountant. However, it's later mentioned multiple times that she's the supplier relations representative. Meredith's kids. At first glance, viewers can easily get confused as to how many children Meredith has. On Take Your Daughter to Work Day, she only brings Jake. She also says kid instead of kids.
I'll take him for my kid.
But at other times, she mentions having another.
I mean, somebody has a kid. Oh, sure, take off a year.
She's right. I had my second kid just for the vacation.
The reason for this is actually in her accountants episode, where she reveals this.
I'm a single mom. I would never do anything to jeopardize my kid.
I thought you had 2 kids.
My ex-husband took Wendy. A good one.
John's signature. When signing Meredith's cast, John Krasinski signs his own name instead of Jim's. Spin-offs. Parks and Rec was supposed to be an Office spin-off. Many believe it would have followed Karen Filippelli since her actress, Rashida Jones, was in both The Office and Parks and Rec. However, Paul Lieberstein, who was the executive producer on both shows, stated that the spin-off idea would have gone something like this. A broken copier featured in an Office storyline would have been sent out to a warehouse to be fixed. Then it would end up in Pawnee, Indiana to become the Parks Department's new copier. That whole idea got scrapped and the show turned into its own separate thing. Then there's The Farm. The season 9 episode of the same name was a pilot for it. The Farm would have followed Dwight and his family running the farm they inherited. It would have had the same mockumentary style of The Office, but Dwight would have left the show for this one. However, it was rejected by NBC after most critics responded negatively to the episode. Greg Daniels had to remove many scenes from this pilot and had to shoot more scenes of The Office to include in it, so it would have made sense on its own when it aired. Finally, we have Dunder Mifflin Next Generation. For this one, Dakota Johnson, who cameoed in the last episode, would have led a spin-off focusing on the new Dunder Mifflin employees once the old cast had left. The idea was just a proposal and never really went further than that. Cast reunions. There were quite a few members of the cast that already know each other. John and BJ Novak went to the same high school and played in the same Little League team. According to John, he says that BJ was the first person to really push him into acting when he was asked to be a part of his play. Brian and Ed Helms also went to the same high school and even were in the same ensemble choir. Brian had no idea Ed was cast until he saw him on set. Then there's this strange coincidence where Angela and Brian realized they had actually met before. They figured out that they went to Acapulco, Mexico at the same time. Memory. Conan interns. A good chunk of the cast had previously interned on Conan. Phyllis didn't audition. Phyllis Smith worked in the casting department for the show and would read lines with actors during auditions. It was during this time that the show's executive producers were impressed with her line reading, so much so that they made a new character just for her in the pilot, Cece's origin. The week they were shooting the episode where Pam gives birth was also the same week that Jenna Fischer's sister actually gave birth to her first child. Jenna already knew what her sister was going to name her daughter, so she asked the writers to give her on-screen baby the same name. She kept that part secret so that her family didn't find out until they watched the episode as it aired. Garage sale details. In Garage Sale, Michael has his broken plasma screen TV up for sale. Jim and Pam also seem to have been able to remove that clown painting because it's also up for sale. Misspelled sign. At Jim and Pam's wedding rehearsal dinner, Jim's last name is spelled wrong on two different signs, one at the event and the other at the hotel host sign. Prop wine. In Pool Party, Oscar chugs a bottle of wine and it has a piece of paper stuck underneath. It reads Oscar. So this is just a prop that he uses, but they forgot to take the label off. Copier security. When Michael visits Utica to give a talk, we can see that the copier is chained to the wall. This is because the last time Michael was there, he tried to steal it. Open floor plan. The Scranton branch is the only branch with an open floor plan where there aren't really any barriers between people. They also have desk mates. This falls in line with Michael's way of managing people, where he thinks the office should be run as if everyone was family. Kevin and Jan. According to a deleted scene, Jan went to the same sperm bank that Kevin regularly goes to. The implication here is that
maybe I'm the father.
Well, this is a highly exclusive establishment.
Next to the IHOP?
Conference room logic. The conference room is a popular spot throughout the show. We see it a lot, sometimes with people sitting in chairs and sometimes with people sitting besides a table. But we never see anyone set anything up or clear it out. That table, where is it stored? It's big, it's made out of solid wood so it can't be folded, there are no wheels on the legs, and the legs can't be folded up. It would take multiple people a long time to even fit it in through that door, given that it's never shown leaning alongside the wall of the room. Steve's sweat. Steve Carell had overactive sweat glands, so the temperature on set was kept to 64 degrees. Space heaters were eventually brought in to warm the rest of the cast. 1725 Slow Avenue is the official address for the office. It's not an actual address in Scranton, but it was named after the town the British show took place in. Satakoy Street was where the office was filmed in California. The name was used in the show, Satakoy Steel, Charles Minor's old company. Cake topper. At Phyllis and Bob's wedding, their cake has a fridge on it. The reason Michael hates Toby is theorized to be because Toby got divorced. Michael has such a big emphasis on family because he took it really hard when his own parents went through a divorce. He never really got over it and projects that childhood pain onto his relationship with Toby. The idea for Michael hating Toby so much came from when Toby was signing a card. Paul Lieberstein took his time and took too long, so much so that Steve Carell actually started to get a little bit annoyed with him. In season 1, Oscar makes a shot in the garbage can. In season 4, he's playing a basketball arcade game. In season 6, when he's trying to impress Matt, he's incredibly unfamiliar with that exact game. Roy and the Dundies. At previous Dundies, Roy seemed to have no problem with Michael making fun of how long Pam and him have been engaged. Overall, he's laughing and having a good time. However, later on in the same episode, he storms off because he's so bothered by Michael and his jokes. Dwight's bathroom trips. In conflict resolution, it's revealed that one of Jim's pranks on Dwight was him moving Dwight's desk an inch every time he went to the bathroom. By the end of the day, it was 2 feet closer to the printer. Doing the math, that means he got up and went to the bathroom 24 times that day. Alcohorse. In viewing party, after Andy mixes the powdered seahorse with his wine and starts feeling ill, he asks Cree to translate the bottle. Even though the punctuation is off, he actually is speaking Mandarin. Translated, it means don't mix seahorse with alcohol. Andy's Call of Duty name. When everyone's playing Call of Duty, Andy has his name as Here Comes Treble. Andy's short sleeves. When Dwight becomes acting manager, Andy's old mirroring habits come back and he starts wearing short sleeve shirts just like Dwight. Michael saves a life. When Michael drives his car into a lake, he struggles to hold on to the window on the side. This is actually because he's trying to get the door open so the cameraman in the back can get out. Stanley and the Black Panthers. In Weight Loss, Stanley holds up this picture and says this.
Here's what I used to look like. Look at those biceps. We were fighting the power and eating whatever we wanted.
This implies that he used to be in the civil rights group, the Black Panthers. This is further driven by the similarities the photo shares with an actual 1966 picture of the group. Leslie David Baker had another audition the same day as his Office audition. He went to the first one, and on his way to the Office one, he ran into traffic. He was in a cranky mood as a result of that, also from being sweaty and wearing rumpled clothes. This was perfect because he was supposed to be cranky in the lines he read. Pregnancy cover-up. In season 4, Angela Kinsey was pregnant, but Angela Martin wasn't. So to hide this, they creatively framed Angela in different ways so as to cover her belly. Fake gas station. The Jim and Pam proposal scene was the security guard, who chose the sound version because hearing it was better. Anchorman appearances. 3 of the 4 Anchorman from the movies were in The Office. The only one missing was Paul Rudd, but he did eventually make an appearance on Parks and Rec. Pam and volleyball. In season 2, when Pam was asked if she was a cheerleader in high school, Roy responds with,
No, she was totally Miss Artsy Fartsy in high school. Yeah. She wore the turtleneck and everything.
In season 4, Pam states that she faked having PMS to get out of playing volleyball. In the next season, she's playing it really well and even says,
Maybe I played a little in junior high and in high school, maybe a little in college, and went to volleyball camp most summers.
Gabe and cockroaches. In season 7, Gabe can't stand looking at a cockroach and scampers off when he sees one. However, we later find out that he loves creepy, unsettling movies and even makes one. Oscar and the carpet. In season 7, after Dwight fires a gun at the floor, Oscar notes that
there is a hardwood floor underneath this carpeting. Why would they do that?
In season 9, after they tear up the carpet, he shouts,
Wait! It's beautiful. Hardwood. I always knew it was down here. I just never dreamed that I would actually see it.
Did Pam or Jim start first? In season 4, Pam recounts how she warned Jim of how his life will never be the same after he meets his new desk mate, Dwight. This implies that Pam was already working there. However, back in season 2, Jim said that he had a crush on her when she first started. Cast mementos. When the show finished, NBC watched the cast and crew to make sure nobody took any props from the set. They didn't watch them close enough though, as Jenna Fischer kept Pam's engagement ring and John kept the teapot and the Dunder Mifflin sign. Dwight gets David's chair. After taking a liking to David Wallace's rocking chair in Cocktails, Dwight seems to have gotten the exact same chair later on. Executive sales color matching. When they met to discuss the Michael Scott Paper Company, Jim and David and Dwight and Charles wore the same color palettes of their respective sides. Michael's fish. During the Michael Scott Paper Company story, there was a different fish on Michael's desk every episode. This was a joke added in by the writers to demonstrate how he couldn't keep a fish alive. Creed has Michael's picture. In a deleted scene, it's revealed that on his desk, Creed has the picture Michael photoshopped of Carol's family. Scrubs Hospital. In Company Picnic, the hospital that Jim and Pam go to is the same one that Scrubs was filmed in for the first 8 seasons. Highlighted document. The document being highlighted in the opening credits is the LA Municipal Code section 12.22. But the interesting thing here is, who uses a highlighter to circle something? That just defeats the entire purpose of a highlighter. 1 million cut trees. Dunder Mifflin has a framed certificate for cutting down 1 million trees from the Rainforest Harvesters Association. Palm trees. The Office was shot in California, where there's palm trees all around. They're not native to Scranton, Pennsylvania, so they go out of their way to get palm trees out of shots, but they still sometimes slip in. Bible business cards. In Christening, Dwight takes the whole event as an opportunity to sell paper, and at the end, he leaves his business cards in the church pews. Dunder Mifflin newsletter. When the Dunder Mifflin newsletter is shown, this is the small text that's repeated there. Fish screensavers. After Michael falls into a koi pond, all the screensavers in the office are set to animated fish swimming. Steve's cement face. The writers told Steve to hold his breath for as long as he could in the fake cement. However, the other cast members were accidentally left out of the loop about this. So when Steve was taking a long time getting back up, they genuinely thought he was stuck and rushed to get him up. They only filmed that once, and that's what we see. Staples store. When Dwight goes to work at Staples, they film that in an actual Staples location. However, between the time that it had been scouted and when the crew arrived, Staples did some redecorating. They replaced all their signs with ones that were 3 times as large because they wanted more advertisement out of the shots. So the crew had to figure out ways to film without turning it into a giant ad. The reason the camera zooms into the security footage at the end was to avoid the huge Staples sign they had put up last minute. Mugs. We all know Michael's world's best boss mug, but there are other ones out there. David Wallace has a similar one. The Prince family has a world's best dad and son mug. Michael's finale secret. Michael's appearance in the finale was kept a secret from NBC so that they wouldn't push for him to be in promotional material. The writers wanted him to be a genuine pleasant surprise for the fans. That meant also keeping it a secret from the rest of the cast, who only found out on the day that Steve was on set. Real Scranton products. It was important for the feel of the show to be authentically Scranton, so they used actual products from the area. Crystal Club is a real Scranton soda. David's Hot Tub beer is a Yuengling beer from a Pennsylvania brewery. There's also items from Wegmans, a popular grocery store in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Accurate CPR saved lives. Stress relief is certainly one of the more memorable episodes, and as it turns out, that's a really good thing because there have been real-world scenarios where someone's life was saved because someone around them has watched that episode. Thankfully, Jen Coletta, who pitched the staying alive CPR idea, heard that the beats of the song were accurate to CPR, but she had that information verified because she didn't want to put that on TV unless it was true. Tom Peets is a former employee of the Scranton branch. When Michael reads out suggestions from the suggestion box, he reads one from Tom. Michael doesn't recognize the name, so Phyllis reminds him that he's the accountant that shot himself in the year prior. There's a whole theory out there that Tom's suicide is what sparked the documentary crew's interest in this branch. That's how it started, and then they met Michael. Thinking he'd be much more entertaining to document than the sadness of an average American workplace, they switched the focus to him. Writers' strike. In 2007, during the filming of Dinner Party, members of the Writers Guild of America went on strike, demanding better pay for working in a changing entertainment landscape as digital sales became more popular. The writers of The Office were part of this strike.
You're watching this on the internet. A thing that pays us $0.
Steve Carell, being the star of the show, refused to cross the picket line and called in sick on the first day. 2 scenes of that week's episode were already shot that day, so the studio took a huge financial hit since they couldn't finish filming. Steve was in breach of his contract, so high-profile executives from the studio and network tried calling him. He told them all the same thing, that the show doesn't work without the writers on set, so he won't be coming into work. Production had fully stopped at that point, which would cause a 6-month gap between episode 8 and 9 of season 4. There was no work for anyone, including all the people behind the scenes that make the magic of The Office come to life on camera. Laverne Caracuzzi, the lead makeup artist of the show, revealed on the Office Deep Dive podcast that Greg Daniels had paid the crew out of his own pocket so they wouldn't miss a paycheck. Other cast members would also follow suit and pitch in so that the crew members got another check around Christmas as a present. Steve was busy. Steve was originally unable to play Michael Scott because he was already on another show, Come to Papa. So instead of him, Bob Odenkirk was cast for the role when the show was presented to NBC executives. Ultimately, Come to Papa didn't work out and only had 4 episodes, so Bob was replaced back with Steve because he was their #1 choice. Leslie's eye incident. On beach day, Rainn Wilson accidentally kicked sand into Leslie David Baker's eye. This caused him to need medical attention and was rushed to a hospital. It was later revealed that he had a scratched cornea from the incident. Andy ate soap. While making Andy be the funny man for him, D'Angelo told him to eat some soap. This wasn't in the script, but Ed Helms took that as a challenge from Will Ferrell. When he actually did it, Will is legitimately surprised here. Champion. One of the dogs Andy adopts is also in Parks and Recreation as Champion, Andy and April's dog. Jim's since the first table read of the episode all the way to the editing room. Dwight's kidney stones. Dwight talks about how he tips his urologist because he himself can't pulverize his own kidney stones. The interesting thing here is that Dwight is a beet farmer, and beets just so happen to be one of the most common foods that'll form kidney stones. Toby told Holly to be mean to him when she meets Michael. It is kind of odd for Holly to suddenly berate Toby, especially with her personality. This theory suggests that Toby was in on it because he knows firsthand how much Michael detests HR. So this was a way to get her on his good side side and have a healthier work relationship. Phyllis and Stanley's secret. In sexual harassment, Toby reminds everyone that romantic relationships between coworkers have to be disclosed. Phyllis then asks if that includes one-night stands. This has had fans speculating because it's never revealed who she had a one-night stand with. The big theory is that it was with Stanley, as they've known each other for a very long time, and Stanley later mentions that he misses her and even made a wooden bird out of her. Pam didn't fail art school. This theory stems from the fact that Pam was doing well in school.
But I have a professor who says that I have a lot of promise, and if I don't try now, I never will. So
she also consistently had an interest in art and doesn't seem like the type to not put in effort in an opportunity like this. Also, when she told Jim, she sounded really surprised to learn she was failing. But that's the thing. You don't typically fail a class after one bad assignment at the end. There's usually a noticeable decline in grades that she would have noticed, and professors would have talked to her about it. According to this theory, she said she was failing because she didn't want her decision to go back to loom over their relationship. When Jim encourages her to keep going, she breaks down because she had hoped that both of them would have decided in that phone call that it would be best for her to come back. She didn't want Jim to feel guilty about her coming back to him and not getting opportunities to prosper in the art field. Faking a failure is a more final, albeit dishonest, solution to that guilty feeling. Jim wrote the show. This theory is a bit out there, but it basically goes like this. Jim is often presented as a normal kind of guy, and can even be debatably called the hero of the entire story. The rest of the characters are written from his perspective. Michael allows him to slack off and pull pranks. Dwight is portrayed as the weird bad guy that hates fun. Pam, his love interest, is the only other person who's really written as normal and sympathetic. All the other side characters are characters of parts of their personalities. Jim's pranking cost. People online have calculated approximately how much Jim has spent on pranks. Some cost nothing, but others were on the more expensive side. Add it all up together, the estimated cost is around $6,000 throughout the series. IRL Scranton. Scranton in real life fully embraces the notoriety from the show. Tourists often go through the city to tour and visit memorable locations. This has caused a bit of trouble though. On the lamppost in front of the town's municipal building, there's a Dunder Mifflin banner, but it was actually stolen and had to be replaced. The famous Welcome to Scranton sign had to be moved because people kept taking pictures of it and kept stopping on the road, blocking traffic on the highway. It was relocated to the food court of the mall at Steamtown, so people could safely take photo ops with it. Buffett bathroom incident. When Warren Buffett appeared on the show, he brought along his vice chairman. Unfortunately, nobody told them that the bathrooms on set aren't real. One of them used the urinal, and that's the reason signs saying fake bathroom were put up. Dwight's Niagara Falls plan. The original idea for Dwight at Niagara Falls came from Greg Daniels. The premise was that Dwight was interested in the history of people and animals going over the falls and surviving. Roy, believing that Pam was still in love with him, was actually supposed to interrupt the wedding. He would ride in, dressed as a white knight, on a horse to object. Obviously, Pam would reject him. He'd slip out in disgrace and end up handing the horse over to Dwight. Dwight would then want to use the horse to jump over the falls, so he'd test the idea in a river, but he'd fall off and have to get rescued. The horse, however, would get swept away and go down the falls. It would survive though. This all would have happened when Pam and Jim were on the boat. Pretty much every writer was heavily against this idea, but Greg would push through it until the table read, when Steve Carell would point out the ridiculousness of the scene, stating that it's a cartoon kind of joke that would not work well with the show. This idea got so far that Greg was scouting water tanks at Universal to film the horse in. Talking head positions. The talking heads are one of the most iconic parts of The Office, but there's more thought to them than you might think. Characters with a future outside of the office have theirs shot with the camera facing outside. This is to convey the feeling that they want more out of life than this job. In Branch Closing, everyone is shot this way until Jan corrects the news that they weren't being shut down and losing their jobs. Will Ferrell got hurt. When he was trying to dunk, Will was attached to a harness that would pull him up even higher when he jumps to make the scene look better. However, the first shot didn't look that good, so they tried it again, but this time he would be pulled up even harder. This was too much as it caused him to move really fast. His knee hit the hoop and he got a really bad cut on his leg. The crew was ready to scrap the scene, but Will insisted they go one more time, and that's the shot that was used in the episode. Everyone involved felt so bad about what happened, but apparently Will Ferrell forgot about the whole thing and had to be reminded about it on the Office Ladies podcast. Safari manslaughter. In a deleted scene, Phyllis talks about a trip to Africa she took with Bob Vance Refrigeration. On a safari, they had been drinking and Bob ran over a person. They got freaked out, bribed the airport, and fled home. Bob Vance Mafia. It's no secret that Bob has a violent side.
I tend to wear something low cut, get men to flirt with me, and Bob beats them up. What?
It's speculated that Bob's whole refrigeration business is a front of some kind, and that he even uses those fridges to take care of people. When Phyllis isn't getting her way with the Santa stuff, she says,
"You promised me this. Don't make me get Bob involved."
What would Bob do?
Never mind, I shouldn't have said that.
It also explains how when there were rumors the Scranton branch was closing, Bob Vance would have been able to get all the warehouse employees for his company. He would have had the funds to hire more people. Michael's family owns Cooper's. In nepotism, Michael states that his half-sister cut him out of that side of the family for losing his nephew, Luke, in a forest. Luke's last name is Cooper, so this theory suggests the reason Michael is always eager to go to the Cooper's restaurant is because he wants to try to see his family there. The Office's blinds. A lot of the shows in the early 2000s for some reason really liked using vertical blinds. The Office's creators opted instead to use only horizontal blinds to make them more popular again because the vertical ones give trouble to people with vertigo and balance problems. Not to mention that they distract from a scene sometimes because it doesn't take much motion to make them swing. The Saber Multiverse. We know that Parks and Rec was originally supposed to be an Office spin-off that ended up being its own show, and yet they use Saber printers. And it doesn't stop there. Another Saber printer can be seen being used on Dexter. Andy's fake parents. When Andy proposes to Angela, his parents, Andrew and Ellen Bernard, are there. The next time we see them is at the garden party, but they look a little bit different, and his dad has a different name.
Mr. and Mrs. Walter and Ellen Bernard!
One might guess is that it's just a recast and an inconsistency, but there's a theory that the parents at the engagement were paid actors. That would explain why they seem so happy to see Andy getting engaged. He wanted everyone to think that his parents were proud of him. Creed is looking for the Loch Ness Monster. At the seminar, he explains that the reward for its capture is all the riches in Scotland. In season 6, he's worried about a rumor that he has asthma. If the rumor gets out, they won't let him scuba.
If I can't scuba, then what's this all been about? What am I working toward?
Michael was going to do blackface. In costume contests, Michael dresses up as Daryl because he's upset at him. You could spot some black streaks on his neck. This detail supports the theory that Michael was going to get ready to put on blackface when he himself realized that would be too far. Stanley's hentai. In Goodbye Michael, Michael tries to do a crossword with Stanley before he leaves. Stanley obviously refuses and, well...
It's called hentai. And it's art.
First of all, Stanley is a man of culture, and the fact that he has those pictures in his Sudoku book calls into question every single scene where he's on it in the background. Radon poisoning. In season 5, Toby mentions how the Office should get tested for radon poisoning. When Michael quickly dismisses his worries, Toby says,
"You'll see."
Radon is an odorless, colorless, tasteless gas, so if the air is not being tested, it's easy for people to get poisoned from it and not know it. Although it usually produces respiratory problems, it could also mess with the brain. It can cause psychological problems and even brain cancer. There's a theory that this is what's going on with the Office workers. As the seasons progress, especially in the last one, the characters start acting more and more cartoony. Dwight's mind. Throughout the series, Dwight can't seem to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. He somewhat believes there's a chance that the Ben Franklin impersonator is the real Ben Franklin. He believed that Jim was becoming a vampire. He treats Troy like he's an actual hobbit. There's also the time he went to school for gifted children. There's a theory that Dwight has a development disorder such as Asperger's. This is also heightened by how much trouble Dwight has reacting appropriately to social interactions. Hunter is Astrid's father. It's heavily implied that Jen and Hunter had a thing going on, especially within the lyrics of That One Night.
You took me by the hand, made me a man that one night.
Apart from what's on the show, there's a full version of the song that has even more supporting lyrics.
You were a queen, and I was your servant. People talk, let 'em. Parents scout, forget 'em.
With this evidence, there's a strong theory that Astrid that Astrid's real father is Hunter. If this was the case, it makes sense why Jen would have wanted to keep the pregnancy on the down low, and that she's just saying she got her pregnancy from a sperm bank. Also because
Jim and I are pretty sure she had an affair with her ex-assistant, Hunter. He was 17.
Meredith is Pam. This theory is really out there, but it basically goes like this. If Pam had stayed with Roy, she would have ended up as Meredith. The marriage wouldn't have been a happy one. They'd have a kid and Roy would leave Pam alone to raise a child. A defeated Pam would have turned to alcohol, smoking, and other promiscuous activities. She wouldn't have had the initiative to get a better job, so she would have just stayed at Dunder Mifflin, just going through the motions of life. There are also some other interesting coincidences. In Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, Roy is playing around with Meredith's son. Their personalities are similar, so they're getting along well. Jim and Meredith both win Best Parent Awards at the Dundies. Later on, Meredith gets confused for Pam. Then there's the time Pam had to take care of the kids herself. This, understandably, is a harder time for her, but what ends up happening is that she brings lice into the office, which Meredith is initially blamed for. Also, there's this.
Morning, Meredith. What? Oh, sorry, Pam. Yikes.
Jim and Pam divorce. Jim and Pam were supposed to divorce and come back together at the end. Jim would have given in to Kathy's attempts to seduce him, and there would have been a shot of them making out. John Krasinski was so appalled by this idea that he went straight to Greg Daniels to put his foot down, telling him that he wasn't going to shoot this scene. John's reasoning was that they can't push the fans too far with a story like that, or else they'll leave. It makes sense considering how long the audience has been rooting for Jim and Pam to get together and to see them grow. Greg was convinced to drop the scene and opted to sour Jim and Pam's relationship in less harsh ways. When Brian the Boom Guy gets introduced, Greg was still set on making Pam and Jim split up so that they could come back together for the finale. However, fans did not like Brian and the feeling of a love triangle forming, so Greg instantly changed up the storyline. The changes were so last minute that they had to re-edit episodes that were already shot to completely remove any hints of Jim and Pam splitting up. Despite all of this, there are still theories out there that Jim cheated on Pam, either with Kathy or in Philly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to learn some new stuff, and if you have anything else to add to this list, or if you just want to start a conversation, please share with the rest of us down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.